All right, guys. My name is Wendy Guzman. I'm a business partner of Mike Ely. Mike is running late, so I'm going to start the live podcast for today. Today we're going to have four different segments. So the first one is I'm going to discuss the basics of the BRRRR strategy, what it is, and why it's Mike's favorite strategy. And then we're going to interview Marshall Downs, who made 100,000 profit with no money down, right? Marshall, you're there. That's
I'm
what.
here. Can you hear me, Wen?
Yep. You can hear you very well. And then Mike, hopefully Mike will be here in time. He will talk about a case study of an actual bird deal that he and Nate did, and then we'll do a Q&A and millionaire mindset. All right. So for today, the sponsor of today's show is the BRRRR 360 conference. All right. So go to BRRRR 360.com. It will be September 26 to 28, 2023. The ticket price will increase by $100, I think, by this Friday. So if you're going there, you want to learn about the BRRRR strategy, definitely go to BRRRR360.com and register right now. And then this show is also sponsored by thesota.com. That's Mike Ely's biggest project to date. It's a $110 billion hotel condo development project. So if you'd like to be in our investor list, go to nasainvest.com to be in our investor list. So for our first segment, right, I want to talk to you guys about, what is the BRRRR strategy? Why is it Mike's favorite strategy? Okay. So, you know, um, so what we will do. So in this segment, guys, we will show you again what the basics of BRRRR, what it is, why it makes sense to do BRRRR, and stay until the end of the show, guys, because everyone who stay until the end of the show gets the apartment analyzer. All right. So, but first, let's talk about what is BRRRR, right? What is the BRRRR strategy? So BRRRR strategy stands for buy, rehab or renovate, right? Rent, okay, refinance and repeat. All right. So now, why does BRRRR make sense, right? Why, more specifically, why does BRRRR make sense for apartments? Well, reason number one is that with BRRRR, you can make a lot of money, especially with apartments. So for example, let me ask you this, guys. Let's say you own a 100-unit apartment complex, right? Um, well, since Marshall is our guest, let me ask Marshall. Marshall, do you think you can reasonably increase your rent? Well, you can increase your rent by $50, like like every year,
Absolutely. I did it.
right? So you did it,
Yep.
so like $50 is nothing, right? Like, like I've seen rent increases like lately, like 200, 300, sometimes $500 per month in rent increase, right? Obviously, it depends on the market, right? But $50 per month, $50 of rent increase for an entire year, you can just say, well, because of inflation, right? But do you know, on a 100-unit apartment complex, over 5 years, you increase the rent by $50 per year for 5 years at a 6 cap, you increase your wealth by $5 million, right? $5 million from a 50 per month rent increase every year, right? Let me show you the math on that one, guys. Now, that's approximate because when you increase the rent, there's also like increase in other expenses, like you charge higher in terms of your property management expense, right? So in theory, you don't get the entire 50-month per rent, 50 $50 rent increase. However, at such low amounts, you can kind of like offset that by decreasing expenses as well. Let's just say you increase the income, right, of your property, that is your net operating income, not just the rent, right? Just to make the math simple, I just want to demonstrate to you guys the basis of this, right? Is that $50 per month per unit times 100 units times 5 years times 12 months, you increase your NOI, your net operating income, by $300,000 per year, right? If you divide that by 6 cap, you're talking about increasing the value of that building by $5 million, right? So who here wants to increase, like their wealth by $5 million? Put it in the chat. Yes, definitely, right? And that's just one building, one apartment building, right? Um, that's just 100 units. Imagine if you can do that with more apartments, right? And there are some apartment buildings, or again, in some markets, that your rent is way lower than market, right? You acquire it, you renovate it, your rent could be like $100, 200, $300 per month, below market, right? And if you can increase that, then do you guys realize the power of this? Like, you can get a substantial increase in your net worth with just one building, with a mere $50 rent increase per year, right? So now, reason number two why you want to do BRRRR with apartments is that you can buy again and again, right, with the same capital, right? So for example, let's say on deal number one, right, you accumulated capital 200,000, you decided to buy a BRRRR, to do the BRRRR strategy, let's say on a, I don't know, 10-unit building. Let's keep it small for now, 10 units, right? And then by that's the $1 million BRRRR. When I say that's your all-in cost, that includes your renovation. Okay, just to make the math simple, right? Now let's say you increase the value to 1.5 million, you pull out 80% of your capital, right? Now you're talking about, $1.2 million is your new loan, right? You get your 200,000 capital back plus 200,000. Now you have now you have 400,000, right? Then you do another deal, right? Now you have 400,000. Now you can buy a $2 million BRRRR deal, right? And let's just say, you did not do as well as before, and you only increase the value to 2.5 million, right? So 2.5 million, 80% loan to value, you pull out $2 million. Now you got your original capital out, and then now you can buy another building. Now you can stack up your properties, right? Now you can stack up your cash flow, and then therefore you grow your wealth that way, because you're increasing your rental portfolio without needing to raise more and more money, right? Now, then another reason why you want to do BRRRR with apartments is that it works in every market cycle. Okay, because a lot of people, or some people, are complaining, well, the interest rate is now higher. We are at 7%, and I've been investing myself since 2003. When I started investing, the interest rate was 8%. Same thing with Mike. And so 6%, 5%. I mean 6%, 7%. That says, yeah, that's fine, right? But there are four stages of the market. You have your buyer's market phase 1, and then buyer's market phase 2, seller's market phase 1, seller's market phase 2. Let me just quickly describe these different market cycles, and I will show you why the BRRRR strategy works in every market cycle. Okay, so the first market cycle is your seller's market phase 1. Your seller's market phase 1, your property values, and your rent increases proportional to inflation. So if inflation is 5%, then your rent is increasing by 3 to 5%, right? Your long-term historical average, you can still be below that, right? Let's say the long-term historical average for apartment is 90%. Your occupancy will probably be around 88, 85%, and then, but it's increasing, right? We call that your normal market. That's your seller's market phase 1, right? In a normal market, it's easy to buy, it's easy to sell, right? So you can buy a good BRRRR deal, right? So, and then you can refinance it, no problem at all, right? Now, what happens is the next stage of the cycle, you're at seller's market phase 2. In a seller's market phase 2, now you should pass beyond the long-term historical average, and your occupancy, increases like, let's say, above 90%. You're at 95, 96%, above the long-term historical average. Your rent and your property values increase a lot faster than inflation. So when you're at that stage, it's more difficult to buy, right? But it's a lot easier to refinance in general. Therefore, you get to pull a lot of your cash out and then you can buy, another building, right? Now, the problem though, when you're in a seller's market phase one, right, at the latter part of that market cycle, then what happens is the rate of increase of your rent starts slowing down, right? Same thing with your rent, right? And then now, because now you're looking at the beginning of the next cycle, which is buyer's market phase one. In the buyer's market phase one, you get the exact opposite of what happens in the seller's market phase two. Now, your property values start going down because your rents are going down, the builders overbuilt. Now there is more supply than demand, you know. So in that stage of the market, the burst strategy still works because now you can buy cheaper, right? And as long as you're putting value into the building, right, then you're still increasing the value, right? But but not as much as, let's say, you're in a seller's market phase one or seller's market phase two. And then the next stage of the market, we call that a stabilizing market. You're at the buyer's market phase two, in which the rate of decline of your rent and your occupancy and property values will start going down, and therefore the market is more stable. And at that stage in the market, that's actually the best stage to buy, right? Because property values have nowhere to go but up, right? So at every stage of the market, the burst strategy absolutely works. And therefore, like when I look back at the deals that Mike, did in the past 24 years, his favorite strategy is the burst strategy, precisely because you make a lot of money, right? Especially with apartments, and then it works in every market cycle. Okay. Now, what else? Well, reason number four, you get tax-free profit, right? Well, technically it's not true, it's tax deferred, right? Okay. But what you can, because the reason why is when you refinance, you get debt, right? You pull your cash out. You're not really, that's not really profit. When you profit when you sell, really. That's when your profit is realized, and therefore your tax is deferred until you sell, or you can defer it indefinitely through 1031, 1031 exchange, right? So therefore you literally don't get taxed. Okay, that's the power of, well, real estate investing in general, but specifically with BRRRR. When you refinance, you pull out cash and it's tax free, right? Guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, right, then like this video, subscribe, comment B360. Okay. Again, if you're on Facebook or Instagram right now, then definitely comment B360. All right. If you like to do BRRRR on apartments and make millions, text the letters MFH for multifamily, MFH to 206-803-8068. Again, 206-803-8068. All right. So with that, let's jump right in to our success interview with Marshall Downs. Marshall made $100,000, and to do this deal, Marshall put a big fat zero on this deal, right, Marshall?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's all true.
All right, all right. So yeah, man. Show your picture so people can see how you look like. You're a real person, right?
They don't want to see this mug, but when I'm having a hard time, the video is not
Oh
working
yeah, yeah.
again.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I need to make you a co-host. Okay, so let me do that real quick here. Um. All right. Yeah, that should work now. Try it again. Does it work now? There you go. Cool. All right. All right.
Awesome.
All righty. So, how do I pin? Okay. I'll just pin it there. So cool, man. So tell me more about yourself. Like so when you started, like tell us your background about real estate. Why did you decide to invest in real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been investing since 2005. Initially really single families, 1 to 4 units, that sort of thing. Um, During that time, I actually got into some property management, which led to general contracting, and then eventually working for a nonprofit developer. And that was a pretty cool job. When I was there, we were doing tax credit projects. We were doing
Mm,
state and federally funded projects. We did some like land and property assemblage for commercial businesses around us. It was really neat. But around that same time, I ended up taking another job for more money, and I found out that I absolutely hated that new job.
mm,
And like 60 days in, I was like, I got to get out of here. Can't do this anymore.
wow.
So, I had already had some rentals by then, and I kind of just was like, all right, it's 2014, coming out of the recession, obviously, there's house flipping going on, there's more activity online about it. And I was like, I got to start flipping some houses. So that's exactly what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I was doing enough real estate work, flipping enough houses, got some more rentals that I was able to leave the job.
Cool. Awesome, man. Now, tell us about this deal, and I'm going to show some before and after pictures that you sent out, right? So, how many units is this?
This is a 15-unit deal in
Mhm.
Southwest Michigan.
Cool. How did you find this deal? And tell us about the numbers and how did you do this deal with no money out of your pocket? That's like probably what most people wanna know.
That's the moneymaker right there, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was kind of involved in some nonprofit work at the time,
Mm.
and I ended up sitting on a board for a housing commission. And one of the fellow board members, she recently lost her husband. They had a successful business, and they also owned a 15-unit apartment complex. And she had been personally managing the complex and kind of dealing with the tenants, toilets, trash, that sort of thing. And she was just really looking to simplify her life. And she was like, want to sell.
Mm.
So she told me that she got an offer for $280,000 with seller financing.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, 15 units, $280,000, seller financing. These are all things that, kind of get your ears perked up a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, so I was like, gosh, that seems kind of low. Why don't I go check the property out? So we walked through it. Wasn't a great property, had rough tenants,
Mm.
but at the same time, it had really good bones. It had like exposed brick in some units. The apartments were really spacious. There
Mhm.
were newer roofs on the two buildings. The floors, walls, and ceilings were like plumb and level, which, some of the type of assets that I had prior to that, you don't always get that. So that got me really, really excited. And my thought was that if she was going to list the property, she could probably get around like maybe 25,000 a unit, so 375,000.
Mm.
So I offered her 325,000, which
Mhm.
basically, we take realtors commissions and some other things out of it. I offered her that 325, which was more than she was offered by that other seller, but a little
Yeah.
less than what I think she could get at the market.
Mhm.
And I also said that I wanted to do it at 50,000 down, and she would finance the balance at 5%, and
Mhm.
she accepted the offer.
Nice.
Um, so at the same time, I was talking to a friend who was interested in multifamily, and I told him that we could partner on the thing 50-50, but I wanted him to put up all of the cash for the deal, the 50,000 down, and then we need another 50,000 for improvements.
Mm.
And I, in exchange, would take care of, managing the contractors, we had property managers, so managing the manager, and,
Mhm.
I would do the heavy lifting in that regard. And he was like, yeah, let's do it.
So it's
So
more passive
totally,
position, right?
totally.
Totally passive.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Mhm.
So he was definitely, it wasn't like a limited necessarily partnership, but he didn't have really much to do. I mean, we got together for lunch like once a week, once every couple of weeks, and kind of talked about the property.
Gotcha.
Um, But from there, the plan was pretty straightforward. We made improvements, we raised rents like you talked about, and you know, we were planning to sell the building. So the first thing we did was we painted the exterior of the buildings, and then we had an interior or a designer actually give us kind of a color palette to work from. And so just by like painting the outside and then update, yeah, and kind of updating signage and that sort of thing, you know, there was just kind of like this freshness, this new appeal, I guess you could say, to the property.
Right.
On the inside, we painted the hallways. So the common areas, we painted the hallways, we painted the doors to the units. We installed new light fixtures, new flooring, and all the common areas. So like, okay, you go outside brand new, inside brand new. And then through all the units that we turned during that time, we painted cabinetry, replaced countertops, installed new hardware, installed new light fixtures, painted them, new flooring, kind of the whole deal, but purely cosmetic, right?
Right.
So when we turned around those units, we were able to raise the rents around $100 a month. So that was like an additional $1,500 a month just on the bottom line, right? Didn't require anything more from us except writing leases with $100 more in the rent. And so during the time we had the property, we turned 11 units total. Of the 15, we turned 11 units. The other 4 just had holdover tenants, so they were still paying rent and whatever. And we stabilized the property at 12 months. And then like 2 months later, we said, hey, you know, this was really fun. Let's sell it and see what we can get out there. So we sold it for $570,000. So at the end of the day, I made $100,000, which I think they call the infinite equity thing, right? I had zero into it.
Right.
I made 100,000. You know, over I think actually the numbers were, I think it was like 16 months maybe we were in the property.
Nice.
And then my partner got back his 50,000 initial investment, which was actually a little less than that. I think you know, by the time when you get the closing statement, I think he put like 45 or something into it. So he got back that money plus $100,000. So he made like more than 3x equity multiple. And then we had another guy who put up 50,000, who was a friend of my partner, and he made 10% on his money, which you know, at the time was pretty good. A couple of years ago was pretty good. So so yeah, that's the project.
Cool. And then you walk away from the deal with 100,000 in your pocket.
Yes, sir.
Nice, nice. And you did it with no money down. That's awesome, man. That's great. So let me see here. So what were the challenges you encountered with this deal, and how did you solve these challenges?
Well, when we bought the property initially, there were like 2 vacancies, I think. So 2 of the 15 units were vacant, and then there was like 1 eviction happening. So 3 units not getting rent, which wasn't like a huge deal because we were planning to turn units anyways. But then literally like the next month, there were 3 more people who just stopped paying. And I think that can happen sometimes when you have you know, an ownership transition. So they just stopped paying. So now we have 6 vacancies and we're not collecting rent. And at that time, we were still waiting for that additional 50,000 to come through for the improvements. So we were kind of like, we're kind of sucking fumes for a couple months there.
Right.
Yeah, but we eventually got that money. And then, you know, as we started turning units 5 months later, we were collecting pretty close to full rent, except whatever unit we were turning at the time. So that was definitely one challenge. And then another one that was kind of minor, but at the time it felt major, was we had in our laundry room, we had a change machine that got broken into. And like it happened like more than once. So I was super frustrated and really vigilant about like figuring out what happened. And we had the police help us out a little bit. We never like really figured it out, but we put in some cameras in all the common areas, and that stopped that. So those were a couple hiccups along the way.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's always like that with real estate, right? Like at the moment you're doing the deal, it felt like, man, why am I doing this? you know. But after that, right, when you sell or when you refinance, like, oh my God, you know, like my net worth increased by that much, you know, so it's all worthwhile, right?
Totally, totally.
Cool. And then I know like you joined our mastermind. When did you join? Like 5 months ago, maybe right now, 6 months?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was like right after OPM intensive.
cool. So that's in January. Yeah, yeah, like 5 months ago. So
Yeah.
tell us why you joined and then how has it helped you so far?
So I've been aware of like NASA and you guys and Mike for a little bit, and like way before I joined, like gosh,
Mm,
probably like 4 years before I joined. So I was aware that you guys were out there, and aware enough that eventually it led me to go to the OPM intensive. And when I went to the OPM intensive, first of all, I was really impressed with the quality of information that you guys were providing. And it's a little bit of an investment, but I'll tell you what, when the one exercise that you did with us, where you're like, talk to people about, what kind of rates, people who are in your network, about what kind of rates you're working with.
right.
And I mean, I didn't raise a ton of money out of the gate, but I raised like 40 some $1,000s, like with not much work at all.
Nice.
So that money, of course, like you can use that 40 some $1,000s to do more and more work. And that's pays for OPM and for the
Mhm,
mastermind, multiple times over. So
mhm.
it was just you guys were really providing the goods. And honestly, if I had joined way back when, I'd probably be a multimillionaire by now. I'm
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, because you're talking about Tim Best with over 1,000 units and he did it just 2 years. I mean, amazing things can happen, right? When you're in the
yeah,
right room,
yeah,
proximity, you know, and then when you have the right know-how, the right know-who, like yeah, amazing things happen, man. So,
yeah,
but congratulations on your success so far, man. Because as Mike said, if you can raise 40,000, you can raise 400,000, right? If you can raise four hundred
totally.
thousand, you can raise $4 million. The principles are the same. You just need to do more of it, you know. So and yeah, I commend you for like implementing what we teach, and that's why you're getting results, you know. So and
Absolutely.
for those of you guys who didn't know, we gave Marshall Downs an award for being a mover and shaker in the apartment and hotel investing industry, precisely because he followed the blueprint, right, for raising money. And I'm sure, Marshall, you will do a lot more deals, just yeah, just follow the plan, man. Just follow the blueprint.
Yeah, you guys have the goods. When like you say, your network is your net worth, and the network that you have with the mastermind is second to none. It's amazing.
Cool. That's great, Marshall. So hang in there. So together we can answer people's questions. So but for now, guys, if you are watching this video on YouTube, definitely like this video, subscribe, comment, Marshall if you're on Facebook or Instagram, so we know exactly like which segment of the live podcast that you guys like. So comment Marshall if you're on Facebook or Instagram, and then so if you like to make $100,000 on a no money down deal, or actually a lot more than that, right? And to think that's just a 15 unit deal. Imagine if you have a 150 unit deal, right? So, definitely text the letters MFH to 206-803-8068. Again, that's MFH to 206-803-8068. All right. So the next segment is a BRRRR case study, an actual BRRRR that Mike and Nate did, you know, and I'll show you the details, right? But in this segment, we will show you an actual BRRRR deal. We will show you how Mike and Nate bought the deal, renovated it, increased the rent, and then how much money they were able to get when they refinance it, right? So, selling a property, that's great. That's what Marshall did. And sometimes we decide to sell a property instead of, holding onto it. There are reasons for doing that. But in general, if you can keep a property, then that's where you make the long-term wealth. is by keeping properties, right? And with the BRRRR strategy, more often than not, you're able to do that, right? So let me share the screen back here, guys. Okay, so all right, let me share the screen in here. Okay, so how did Nate and Mike found the deal? Okay, so this deal that they were doing, it's called Hassler and Spruce. They did a deal with that same seller, okay, and they know that that seller was pretty motivated, right? She didn't know what she was doing, just like Marshall, just like Marshall's seller, right? Kind of tired of that property. Okay, it's a 30-unit apartment complex, several buildings in that one compound, so to speak. The purchase price is 500,000, with closing costs is 514,000. And what they were able to do is negotiate owner financing for 300,000. So guys, what that means is, they don't have to go to the bank to get a bank loan, right? The seller was willing to finance them. And look at this, it's only 4.5% interest only. So the payments on that is like very little, right? With a 3-year balloon, a balloon payment, what that means, for those of you who don't know, is that in 3 years, you got to pay, all of that loan back, like the entire balance, right? 300,000, right? So, and what they did was, they were able to raise a down payment and the rehab cost, from private investors. Okay. Um, then, the reason why, they did this, and I've been working with Mike for 4 years now, and, like, I basically, work with him closely at the office. I know how he thinks, and the whole reason, Mike and Nate bought this deal was that the rents were super low. Okay, so the rent was only 395 per month. I mean, it's hard to believe this was like just a few years ago, for one bedroom, right? When the market was at 600 to 650 per month. I mean, right now, the rent for one bedroom is like, 850, in some cases, even 900 per month, right? But at that time, it was only 395, right? But the market was at 600 to 650. Okay, guys, anytime you see that a property has low rents like that, a lot lower than market, there is an opportunity there. Okay, and then what's more, Section 8, here in Cincinnati, it was at 737 per month. Just like worst case scenario, you can like renovate it enough for Section 8 guidelines, right? And then just rent it Section 8, and you get even higher than market, right? Now for 2 bedrooms, they were collecting only 450 to 495, and yet the market was at 800 to 850, and Section 8 was like 950 per month, which is crazy. Now get this, guys, when like for example, if you go to apartments.com and you start looking at different apartments, that are for sale in your zip code, right? Or not for sale, but are being rented in your zip code. If like one quick tip here that's not in the slides, I just want to give you guys like, a lot of value here. If you know the market rent in your area, and now in apartments.com, you see like this apartment building that, the units look outdated, the rents are below market, let's say $200 to $300 a month below market, and then when you look at the tenant rating, the tenants rating the property, it's 1 or 2 stars. Chances are that that owner is motivated to get rid of it. Why? Because, he doesn't have the money to fix the place. The rents are lower than market. Why? Because precisely because he doesn't have the money to fix the place, and he just wants the place rented, right? And then the tenants hate the place. They rated it 1 or 2 star. That's an opportunity. What we teach our students is when you encounter a deal like that, track down the owner and call him or her and say, hey, are you open to selling your property? Because chances are that seller, if you call the seller, he or she will tell you, well, yeah, sure. Like how did you find out about that property? Right? I mean, we have some students who did that strategy and found like two buildings that, like that are great opportunities, and she did it in like one Saturday, right? So in this particular case, the vacancy was high, 57%. So again, anytime you have like high vacancy, that's a sign of mismanagement, and mismanagement leads to seller being motivated, right? And so then the way Mike analyzed the deal is that if the average rent in the area is $700 per month, right? If they can go up to the $700 per month, increase the occupancy to 90%, and let's assume an expense ratio of 55%, right? If you do the math in there, your NOI will be around 122,000 per year, and cap rate at that time was 10%. So that means they should be able to get a value of 1.2 million, right? With the acquisition of 514,000 and rehab of 250,000, they're all in is about 764,000. They can make 350,000 after commissions, and then if you add the cash flow, let's say over the next 5 years, then you'll end up with $550,000 in like total profit, right? So which is good for a property that you bought for 514,000 and you rehab for 250,000, right? So that was what they were expecting, right? Based on the analysis that they did at that time. But you know what, guys? Something crazy happened. Mike was wrong because Mike is super conservative when he makes his analysis on these deals. But the fact is they were able to increase the rent to 805 per month per unit on average, right? They increased the occupancy to 95%. And this is the actual data of their income and expenses over that 3 years. This January 2020, just before they refinance. I think they refinanced this in February 2020. And so they started with low rents, low occupancy, right? Below 10,000 per month. And then, they took over, they increased the rent, they simultaneously increasing the occupancy at the same time, right? Keeping the expenses under control. So essentially they went from 6,500 in NOI to over 15,000 in NOI, and today the NOI is like closer to 20,000, right? So the value at that time with this 15,000 plus per month in net operating income gave them a valuation of $2.1 million. And so what they did, again being very conservative, is they refinance it for only 60% loan to value, pulling out 1.2 million. They paid off all their investors, and they put $409,719 in their pockets tax-free, guys. Who wants 409,000 tax-free, right? And in addition, this property, right, their loan of 1.2 million, it's worth 2.1. They still have 900,000 in equity. Who wants that? Put that in the chat. I want that, right? So that's just crazy, and that's only one deal, right? So guys, again, if you find this, if you're watching this on YouTube, like this video and subscribe, or comment deal if you're on Facebook or Instagram. And guys, if you like to do BRRRR, if you like to BRRRR apartment buildings and make massive profit, right? Tax free, right? Or tax deferred, technically, text the letters MFH to 206-803-8068. Again, that's 206-803-8068. So guys, we mentioned about the mastermind. These are just some of our successful mastermind members. We have Tim Best, over 1,000 apartment units, Robert Musso, Alex Chan, 800 units in 1 year, Gaspare, Keisha, so the question is, why can't you be next? So for example, Teresa Arbison, our latest mastermind member, who left her job as an anesthesiologist, right? With the 30 unit that she purchased, plus single family home, she was able to leave a high paying job, precisely because of what we taught her how to do it inside our mastermind. So text the letters MFH to 206-803-8068. 8068. So for now, you know, let's answer all of your questions, guys. Okay. So, Marshall, you're still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right, cool. All right, so let's go to here, the chat in here and see what questions do people have. So from Amelia, when you're using OPM and loans for purchasing a property that has rents below market, how do you factor in holding costs for the time it takes to raise rent, especially if evictions are in order? All right, so how do you factor in holding costs? Well, with single family homes, you need to factor in holding costs, right? Because, you know, once you renovate a single family home, there's no income coming in. But with apartments, the way you do it, and I don't know, Marshall, if you have a different answer, but the way you do it is, you know, you obviously don't renovate all of the units, right? You just renovate it regular turnover, right? And then, I mean, essentially, the holding cost for a vacant unit is more than made up for by the income from the other units, right? So it's not a big deal, especially the more units you have under one building, you know. And then also um when you raise the money, right, you kind of budget that in as well, right? That essentially, you know, again, you just have to do the math in there, right? Like how many units will be vacant by how much time, right? And then just, I don't know, but when you raise the money, just add like 5-10% more, right? Unless you're renovating a 100% vacant building, then it's a different story. Now you need to factor in a lot more in terms of holding costs. Um, Marshall, do you
Yeah,
have an answer to that?
yeah, no, I was just gonna say that's a really good question, because I think a lot of people, and Amelia, I don't know where you're at in your journey here, but a lot of people look over some of those small costs that can really, bite into the overall profit at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, you have to just, what we did was we did our best to project what those numbers would look like. And quite honestly, like I mentioned in one of our challenges, we were a little off because we had double the number of vacancies, after the first month or two than we thought we would. So definitely if you're doing this sort of project, aim high and make sure you've got some capital reserves so that you can get over those humps. But that's a really good question.
Cool. All right. Next question is, so do you stagger the rent raises? For example, if you buy a 20-unit building and all the rents are low, Marshall, you want to answer that first?
Yeah, that's how we did it. So we went into the building and essentially as we turned over units, we increased the rent. We had, like I said, we had like half of the number, not quite a half of the number of people, vacate the property right out of the gate. So we had a feeling that that trend would continue as we continue to make improvements. We would continue to have people, decide that they wanted to be somewhere else, and that's exactly what happened. So yeah, we definitely staggered them, but I know that other investors have done something where they're like, okay, well, we're taking, we're 50% of this building has been improved, so you have to raise the rents on the people who have been there for that entire time. It may not be the entire number that you would raise someone who, is getting a new unit, but you're going to have to raise the rents because, like Wen said earlier, it can just be, I mean, it can be inflation. It can be a variety of reasons why rents need to go up.
Yeah, and then sometimes when you take over the property, what you can do is, let's say, because legally you cannot increase the rent, right? When the lease is still active, meaning they're not yet on a month-to-month lease, right? So if you still have like 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, obviously, right? Left on the lease, you cannot just increase the rent, right? So what you can do when you take over the property is you send a letter to everyone, to all the tenants, right? Saying that, hey, we're taking over the property, we're increasing the rent, to $1,500, whatever it is, right? By uh by the time, but by this time now, if your lease is still active, your lease will change. I mean, your rent will change when your lease expires, right? But if you're in a month-to-month lease, in 90 days will increase the rent, right? So now they know you're going to increase the rent, right? So now the ones, you know, that are in a month-to-month lease, they have a choice to say, hey, I'm not renewing the lease and I'm leaving, right? Then you renovate those first, right? Well, obviously you renovate the units that are already vacant, right? And then you renovate those that will come in later, right? The ones that are in a month-to-month lease. But yeah, you kind of prep your tenants that, hey, it's under new management, you know, rents are going to increase because of this and this, you know. And then what you can do too is, you know, once you renovate a vacant unit, show it to the tenants. That's your show unit, right? You know, so you should always have two units available. One is like your show unit, right? You don't rent that, like that's the last unit you will rent out, right? So that you always have a show unit. And sometimes when those tenants see, and I have experience with apartments too. You know, like my first apartment building is a 36 unit apartment building. So we always have a show unit, because if you don't, like, the tenants cannot envision, like, oh my God, you know, if you show them that, hey, you have new flooring, stainless steel appliances, whatever, right? Let's say you bought in a C area, but you renovate it as if now that property is in a B area. You know, they will be like, oh my God, it's so great. Instead of me moving, I'll be willing to pay like $200 a month per unit more in rent, right? Because you made this unit so nice that it's worth paying $200 more versus me moving out, you know? So that's how you do it. You definitely should stagger it, right? But definitely vacant units first, and then the month to month, and then obviously as the lease expires, then you rent it. All right. Did that answer your question, Amelia? All right. RE Guru, question is, in my area, sellers typically want pro forma numbers, even for way below market rents, meaning for something like the example you showed us, they would want 1.2 million. Okay, so I guess your question is, how do you deal with a seller like that? You want to answer that, Marshall?
Sure. You know, I think oftentimes part of our job as investors is you have to do excuse me, you have to do a fair amount of education to sellers, and you may have to really kind of lay out, you know, very in detail why the property is worth what your offer is, and why pro forma numbers that are stabilized and basically have taken them through the entire process that Wen and I were talking about, why it's not at that value today. I personally am not, and this took, you know, a fair amount of years of investing. I'm not at all, you know, hesitant about making a low offer. Sometimes you'll work with a broker or someone who will really try to push you into a higher number, but stick to your guns. And definitely, I would say, if you're underwriting your deals and you feel like you're doing all of the due diligence necessary, and you come to your price, your max offer is your max offer. You know, and it may just take a lot of digging. That's why I think a lot of people really like off-market deals, because you don't have some of the structures in place like the brokers and you know, some of the other systems that are kind of working against those numbers. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, like, yeah, I mean, come to think of it, at least the deals that I've done, they're all off market. That's one. So, you know, if you're dealing with apartments that are listed, right? Um, there is a good chance, not always, obviously, because every deal is different. There's a good chance that the seller is not really that motivated. You know, he or she wants top price. And you know, like, one of the things that I do for Mastermind members is I analyze, you know, deals with them. And I showed them the like, and a lot of the deals that we look at, yeah, they're asking for pro forma, like the number, the asking price that they want is based on pro forma numbers, which is crazy, right? you know but the key, right, number one, off market deals, right, and then number two, you need to find motivated sellers. And I've shown you guys like how you do that, right? Go to apartments.com, look for apartments that look outdated with rents $200, $300 from below market, and the tenants hate the place. They rate it 1 or 2 stars. Then you track down the owner and you call them. Okay, you do that, you will have a motivated seller, right? Because if your rents are low, below market, the tenants hate you, and you run out of money to fix the place, chances are you don't care anymore, and chances are you'll sell at either at a cheap price or good terms. So did that answer your question, RE Guru? All right. From on, is it customary to present a business plan to the broker? Want to answer that, Marshall?
Sure. That's an interesting question. I don't know that I've given that one a ton of thought previous to this to now. I guess I would say if I were a broker, I may think that someone who presented a whole business plan to me maybe looks like a newer investor, and I would maybe be a little less inclined to, kind of work the deal the same way as if they were a more seasoned investor. So I would instead maybe go over that plan with some people that you trust, some people in your network, especially those who have, some good experience. And you can maybe just lay out bullet point the details to the broker, and definitely don't present, I mean, again, that's just my 2 cents. Definitely don't present them the full business plan like they have some say in how you operate this after you buy it.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's no need for it, number one, right? Number two, if you think that will build your credibility, it really doesn't. Like what we do with our mastermind members is that they get to show Mike's bio, and it's like, oh my God, you guys have done what, over 3,000 apartment units over the years? Yeah, sure, you guys are legit. You guys are credible. That's why our mastermind members, when they do that, they get deals. They get off market deals. So you don't need it. The only time that I kind of did, but it's not really a business plan, but it's more like, I was trying to convince the seller to do an owner finance deal. The broker is like, no, 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 the seller won't do that. No, 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 but no, just present it. No, 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 the seller won't do that. And then it's like, just present it. I presented it, but the seller said no. And then said, you know what? Let's do this. Let's just do a three-way call. You are still involved. We will show the seller what we mean when we say owner financing. And so we did that, like a few slides later, and then the seller said, oh yeah, let's do it. Like, so sometimes when you have everybody in the room and you show them what you mean, then the seller understands it, versus you trying to present it to the broker and the broker trying to present it to the seller. If you want something creative like an owner finance deal, sometimes it's good to, like, the you can still involve the broker, but you need to talk to the owner. Okay. All right. So hope that answers your question on. And we have 1 more minute, guys. If you have one more question, Marshall and I can answer just one more question. Going once, going twice. All right. I guess that's it. And I don't know, Mike was not able to join us, unfortunately. Okay, hold on. All right. Cool. All right, guys. So one last thing that I'd like to show you before we leave here. So we did the Q&A, and again, guys, to join our mastermind, text the word MFH, to 206-803-8068, to become, our next success story. We have a lot of success stories now. Again, text the word MFH to 206-803-8068, 206-803-8068. So usually Mike is the one who does the mission and mindset. But guys, I just want to share quickly, the most important investment you can make is investing, in the 6 inches in between your ears. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because Warren Buffett even said that the best investment you can make is investing in yourself, because it will pay off dividends year after year after year, right? Mike told me the story on how he did not make $10 million on a deal, 1,000 units, because he didn't know at that time what he was doing, like how to articulate before an investor as to why that was a good deal. He was too cheap to invest in himself, and he lost out on a $10 million profit deal. And so one of his friends, pushed him, hey, you need to invest in yourself. Take the CCIM courses. It costs like over $10,000. But from then on out, now he knew the language of large apartment complexes. He can talk about, IRR, the different ratios, and so on and so forth, right? So investing in yourself is key to success in apartment or hotel investing, right? So definitely, guys, when you do that, that's when, what I tell our sales team, is that what we want, is transformation, not just giving information. That's what we want for you guys, is to transform your lives to become better apartment and hotel investors, so that you can take advantage of these deals. And guys, I shared this with our mastermind members, but there are a lot of opportunities coming up real soon. Okay, for example, with hotels, there's $247 billion worth of hotels that are maturing this year, not next year, but 2023. So what does that mean? Some of those hotels will be in foreclosure because they cannot refinance because of the higher interest rate. Same thing with apartment buildings. And if you have not invested in yourself, then you are not ready to take advantage of these opportunities. So as Mike would say, you are one big deal away. You better be ready. So that's it. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye. Bye, Marshall.